All right, so we're gonna get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm extremely honored to be here and taking over the MC role for Vito, who is my amazing DD. So I'm Daisy Guzman. I'm a graduating senior here at California State University in Fresno, and I'm a marketing major. Right now, I'm in the natural resources industry, and I'm looking forward to just growing that industry as a grant report analyst. So right now we're going to start to ease into the questions. We'll first start off with an opportunity to for the candidates to give their campaign speech. So remember, candidates, this is a 3 minutes pitch. And if you're up, Paul, we can start off with you.
Oh, perfect. Well, thanks, Daisy, and really thanks everyone here at FRAC for hosting tonight, and really wanted to express my appreciation really for the inspiration and feedback and support that many of you gave me during my time as National Alumni Development Chair and my current role as head of the NADC's Affinity Group Pilot Program. Your inspiration, your feedback, and your support help run national networking events, alumni collegiate resume review sessions, national alumni meetups, as well as develop a framework for an alumni structure that is more appropriate for the digital world. As Graham President, I'll use this collaborative brother first approach to ensure that our members and our fraternity are really put in the best position to succeed. I'll take a brother first approach with my stakeholders, our collegians, our alumni, our board, and our staff to create closer connections between all brothers in the national fraternity, provide customized education and support for our brothers and chapters, and really encourage more interactions and learning between our collegiate and alumni members. Wise brother once told me that to do something different, you need to see something different. And over the past 22 years as a DD, RVP, board member, chair of 2 national committees, a foundation campaign team member, and a marketing leader, I've consistently combined feedback from my constituents along with my personal knowledge to see things differently, to bring different ideas to life and deliver significant results, all in a collaborative manner with tons of teamwork. I look forward to diving into my plans and background tonight, and certainly do invite you to continue the conversation afterwards. You could reach me certainly via Zoom conversation. You can attend my May 22nd town hall, or we can have a one-to-one conversation, or follow me through my social media channels, which you can find at Linktree /Paul for GP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for that. Henry, if you're ready.
Yeah. First, I do want to thank everyone again, also just like Paul, for being here tonight, especially to Daisy for stepping in and moderating this evening for us. I'm Henry McDaniel. I'm currently serving on the board of directors as the South Central Provincial Vice President. I've served in almost every capacity from DD up to PVP. Now, hopefully, will become your grant president. Currently, I live in Kansas City. Just wanted to take a moment, kind of tell you about myself. So I live in Kansas City. For those watching, the home of this weekend's NFL draft. Live with my beautiful wife, brother Chris McDaniel, and our 2 fur babies, Flynn and Megra. Professionally, I'm a product management. Working for SelectQuote Insurance here in Kansas City. It's a large national insurance agency. I oversee about a $200 million book of business, and I'm overseeing about a virtual team of about 10 people. More specifically, and one of the traits I bring to being grant president is this ability to, through my job, bring new technology that helps our business. I also can help bring new technology, new thoughts, new processes to Delta Sigma Pi. Fraternally, I've been an active alumni for over 20 years, dedicating my time and effort to making our fraternity stronger by coaching and mentoring our mentors, our members into future leaders, both fraternally and professionally. I want to be the next grant president for a multitude of reasons, but mostly to continue this journey of providing the needed change our organization needs and deserves. I see this change to be accomplished in 3 ways. First, I believe in the empowerment of our chapters, our local leaders and staff to manage the day-to-day operations of this fraternity. The board is starting to lay that groundwork for this, but there is so much that needs to be done. By getting the board of directors out of the way from the daily management into strategic oversight where it belongs, we'll remove that bottleneck that's been created by our current top-down structure. Second, we need to focus on educating our brothers, better equipping them for both success in the fraternity and also in the professional world. I want us to take steps to overhaul how we educate our members, and more importantly, what we educate them on. Lastly, none of this works without the engagement of our members. I believe by the empowering and educating our brothers, they'll be more engaged at all levels of this organization. Providing events for collegiates and alumni brothers to engage and educate gives brothers more opportunity for networking and the chance to be part of the larger group. Engagement will lead to more diverse membership and help us grow and prosper as a fraternity. Brothers, I know it's a simple vision for my time as your grand president, but simple is always the best. The solutions, however, are far more complex and will require a leader that can ignite our members for a common purpose. I know I'm that grand president to lead and ignite our membership to success. I hope that I can count on everyone's support. And you can find more out about me, my campaign, at henry4dsp.com, and that's the number 4. Thanks.
Thank you, Henry, for that. Thank you both, actually. Before we start the questions, I want to say that you both are must-sounding candidates, and I'm really excited to hear both of you guys' answers to the next questions. Before we start that, I do want to remind you guys that if you guys do have questions, please put them on the chat, and Vito will be moderating the chat with you guys. So in the questions, we're going to alternate who goes first. But for the first question, if Henry wants to start first, what are your plans and ideas to have open communication and transparency with collegiate officers, alumni volunteers, and general collegiate and alumni brothers?
Thanks, Daisy. Honestly, I think this is one of the lowest hanging fruits we can accomplish for our membership. And that's how to better communicate with them. Communication in my mind has to be very simple and provided to the members where they want to be communicated at. And that's going to be multi-channels, either direct, email, social media, or just sending them podcasts, videos, stuff like that. What I truly believe is we need to, on a regular cadence, probably on a monthly basis, provide information on what the board is discussing and what our national committees are doing to accomplish our strategic priorities. Like I said, it's both written, getting that out via short videos that can be played either a chapter or by our local membership. I also think we need to, as leaders in this fraternity, be better about educating how the decisions are made at the board level and how they impact our chapters and our members. In other words, we need to bring them along for the ride that we're going on ourselves as leaders. So making sure they're in the passenger seat and understand what we're doing as an organization. Lastly, I think, doing more town hall style events, because our memberships have a lot of questions that they want to ask us. So I want to give them those opportunities. So whether that's done at LEAD or virtual events like this, where they can just talk to our leaders one-on-one, be there, communicate, give us feedback, and be engaged in the process, all the way from the DD to the grand president, is going to help our organization grow. And I think giving us those opportunities to better communicate and have just more channels is going to be the answer and the solution for that.
Thanks, Daisy. Really open communication and transparency is really about having information that's easily available to everyone, whether you're an executive committee member, a collegiate chapter member, alumni member. You want to be able to have access to it and react to it. And really what I'd like to see is us do 3 things. 1, consistently provide our chancellors, our collegiate chapter presidents, and our alumni chapter presidents with 1 or 2 national update slides, which can be put into their regular chapter agenda presentations. And these would be extremely simple, really covering what's top of mind for the board of directors. What are some recent decisions that they have made? And what are those decisions that are coming down the pipe? As well as really covering what are the upcoming webinars and events that are available to you. So we're really understanding 1, what decisions are being made, 2, what's coming down the pipe and what are the thought processes behind them, And then 3, how can you better yourself through Delta Sig? And then certainly we can piggyback this through, the regular update videos, which I know that idea is certainly out there. But, in these videos, they could also be shown at chapter meetings in addition to the slides on our social media channels. And because we're providing some of this information earlier in the month through these update slides, we could also incorporate things like best practice tips to really start helping our chapters and our members help themselves. And I agree, I think we need to, and I personally will ensure that we will be having these regular town halls, and we need to be able to collect the feedback and the pulse of the membership. And, they certainly have to be an active participant in the decision-making process. As a marketer, I literally pump out information in different formats to different stakeholders every single second of the day. So a lot of these ideas, I've done professionally and leveraged those during my, Delta Sigma Pi experience. I've ran town halls where I've gotten ideas from collegians that have actually led to things like the alumni meetups and the kind of the networking events and resume reviews. I've done newsletter updates as a regional vice president to help our chapters understand how our region's performing. And I've had those feedback sessions, which have actually helped to bring about some things like the affinity group program that we're currently piloting.
Thank you both for that.
Yep.
So if you guys have any questions, again, leave them in the chat. And we're going to go ahead and go into our second question, which is, what do you believe your childhood self would think of you today? Paul, if you want to start off with that one.
Yeah, I'm wearing his suit jacket, so I guess I have a pretty direct line on this one. But I think he'd definitely say, man, you made it, right? You're literally playing football in your front yard every morning. Every day in the house is like a Boston sports radio. You're talking about the Celtics game, how the Pats are doing. And he loved the fact that I'm always on a sports field, on a basketball court, or in a theater every day. He'd certainly be thrilled that my wife is a fellow Red Sox fan who loves fire pits in the summer and, relaxing to a nice game of Jeopardy. And also as a kid, I really wanted to play for the Red Sox. It might be a Boston thing. And, when my knees were worn out, I was going to be the general manager. I wanted to be a piece of something that meant so much to many people and really be a person who'd be able to kind of put that together and make a fan base proud. And being part of Delta Sig, to me, it might sound cliche, but it is literally like a feeling like I did make it to the major leagues. Every day I'm working with some amazing people to execute some amazing ideas and put a great product on the field. Product that's making the organization better and, people proud of themselves and of this fraternity.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually going to admit, this is kind of one of those harder questions for me because I still feel like a kid sometimes, even as an adult. I often say I'll decide what I want to do when I grow up. So sometimes I guess I'm still feeling in my childhood, but the 12-year-old, the 16-year-old that sat in high school and junior high, really, I came from a good family, but it was loosely connected. My biggest cheerleader was my grandmother, who pushed me and pushed me and pushed me and still pushes me today. And I think that kid would kind of be impressed that they made it. First generation college student, but knowing my family had gone before, so it was just, odd. And to see that I accomplished that, I got my master's, and where I'm at today professionally is just, I don't think, my childhood was probably wanting to be a, fireman or police officer or school teacher. And it's like, no, your path took a very different in your turn. So I think they'd be very intrigued on some level. And the one thing I would say is they probably would not find that my involvement in Delta Sig is a shock at all. Our family had a very high importance on community service through our church, through other social activities. So we stayed involved in our community. And I feel like Delta Sigma Pi, when I got to college, was just kind of a, another path for me to be involved in communities and helping others, like college students, other members, stuff like that. So I think they'd be impressed. I think they'd be happy what we've turned out to be. But I think they'd also be excited that you don't know what the path forward is. And you're always ready for the next challenge, the next excitement. So yeah.
It's really nice to hear. So now that we have you both kind of looking back to your childhood, maybe this next question, we're gonna switch it up to a funny one. To loosen up a little bit. What was your favorite Disney princess and why? So I'm gonna give you guys some time to think about it a little bit. We'll start with you, Paul.
I have a little bit of recency bias based on the last Disney play my kids were in, but probably Mulan. I think she counts as a princess, but you know, it's someone who, you know, unsung hero, so to speak, you know, might have gotten herself in a little trouble to get there, but really kind of came and saved the day. So I'm gonna go with her, and give a nod out to the Starline Academy Mulan production.
I really like Mulan too.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You, Henry.
So I would say I'd probably go with Jasmine from Aladdin. Probably a couple of different reasons, mainly that my grandmother's family's from like the Middle East, from Syria. So you always, growing up, we had, you know, the food, that life was always part of it. You know, going to those family events, and you kind of always wondered what it'd like to be like, live in the palace in the middle of the desert and stuff like that. So I think it's more intrigue to be Jasmine in my world than anything. I guess I should also say my first dog ever was named after Jasmine by a 3-year-old, and it was Princess Jasmine. So that's probably another reason that I would want to be Jasmine. So
That's really cute. Okay, so thank you both for that. Hopefully some of you people in the audience could relate to them. But for the candidates, I wanted to ask if you guys would be okay with going off script for a little bit and get one of the audience's questions. We are getting a lot of Q&As from them.
Sure.
Okay, give me 1 sec. So we'll start off with Henry on this one. So alumni engagement is not a priority for the fraternity currently, at least strategically. What will you do to help with alumni engagement, whether or not it becomes a strategic priority in your tenure? I'm gonna give you guys some time to get
yeah,
back.
I was just making notes.
Yep.
So, you know, I do appreciate that question because you know, as we celebrated Alumni Day yesterday, I said in my toast, alumni are the backbone of this organization. And, you know, I would argue maybe a little that it's not part of the strategic plan, the engagement, but I don't think we have enough emphasis on it. And I do agree with that. You know, things that we need to do are things like, you know, the alumni meet and greets that we've had around the country to try to bring in people that have been kind of on the fringes for a while and get them involved, even if it's just, you know, coming to that 1 or 2 events a year, and that, you know, using things like the school alma mater type things. Like, I live in Kansas City, but there is a huge alumni chapter of Texas A&M people that literally get together for every football game. And by God, they're sitting down at that bar watching the football game. But it's that camaraderie that they're building. So helping our alumni be engaged with each other, I think, is going to be one big step. I think the other one, and as I said earlier, it's about empowerment. So a lot of our alumni, I believe, are very disenfranchised because they don't see how they can be empowered in the fraternity, how they are empowered to make change, how they are empowered to be involved, how are they empowered to help others. That's what we have to do. And that's why I said earlier, like, that's about educating them on how they can be part of the process. And frankly, it's you know, don't have a select group of 10, 20, 30 people at the top of the organization making all the decisions, carrying out the day-to-day mission. Our local alumni are very capable of doing that. We may need to give them some tools. We may need to give them some education. We may need to help them understand how to help, but we have that capability through, you know, our programs right now. So, you know, it's getting them involved, getting them connected, and then just basically giving them the power to help the organization itself and helping them understand that it all doesn't ride on the grand president's shoulder. It doesn't ride on the board of directors. They are part of this whole fraternity itself.
Right, and then Paul, let me know if you need me, or Henry and Paul, let me know if you guys need me to reiterate the question.
No, I think I had it. And, certainly alumni engagement would kind of fall under the member engagement kind of portion of our current strategic priorities. And I think the big part here is really switching the way that we're messaging Delta Sigma Pi for alumni. I think currently a lot of the messaging the alumni are getting is you could be a district director or you could donate. So, or volunteer time. So if I'm someone who doesn't necessarily have a lot of time or treasure, I'll easily be disenfranchised by that. And really what I mean by switching the messaging is certainly working on programming that is beneficial for them. So one, yep, the alumni meetup programs that we're doing is certainly a way of doing that. The affinity group programs, which we're working on, are really looking to copy a format of an employee engagement that corporate America is using in order to bring alumni closer to each other and closer to the fraternity. So then they'll really certainly start to understand that, hey, there are more people in this fraternity who are marketers, who are supply chain experts that I'm working with and I'm joining with. And then as we're getting those folks engaged, then we could start talking about and introducing them to portions around the volunteer opportunities and things like that. I think also another way here is certainly, a lot of our alumni are in positions where they are hiring managers or are managing teams. So certainly making it easier for them through things like the Delta Sig hiring network or centralizing that a bit where they could actually find their next employees, whether that might be their next interns or their next full-time employees. And really also helping our alumni who are looking for jobs be able to find jobs that way as well. Again, I think it's as much about us giving alumni value in order to help them get engaged more than us taking that value from alumni. And that's really what we'll need to do, I think, to get us a bit more engaged. And then they'll be more apt to give their resources, their time, and their knowledge to us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you both caring for the alumni and really putting some thought to this question. Could I hear from Paul? I believe this next question on your thoughts on change of governance.
Yes, so I think certainly what we've identified a bit from a board of directors perspective is we definitely identified the fact that we've geared a bit more towards the operational side of the house. And I think that somewhat makes sense. It's a bit weighted currently towards a lot of folks who are more responsible for certain areas of the country. And while we're moving a lot of that chapter management or kind of chapter governance piece a bit more to staff, I think that's still where their leanings are going to be. I think as I think about our national board of directors, I think more about a corporate board of directors or corporate executive committee where they're actually having executive level folks who are really focused on specific strategic areas. We have strategic pillars around member engagement, around member development and operational efficiency, or excellence, but yet no board level accountability for it. So I think that's certainly one area that we want to be looking at. And I also think we should be looking at really a bottom-up structure here and looking even at our collegiate officer levels. The collegiate officers, a lot of these chapters now are looking at directors of marketing, directors of DEI. So that's also certainly an opportunity to really understand if these are items that are really areas where chapters feel that they need accountability at the local level, then that most likely means to better serve them, it's probably a good idea to also have that at the national level as well. But I think in terms of finalizing a final governance structure, it's also taking a look at how other fraternal organizations are run, how other nonprofit organizations are run, and even taking a look at how alumni association board of directors are run. Obviously, there's a bit difference there in terms of sort of the same thing. So I think that's a good way to look at it as well. And that would also start shifting the mindset a bit from a holistic approach to the organization versus one that might be a bit more operational or collegiate focused.
Thank you so much, Paul. And Henry, what are your thoughts on this?
Daisy, I'm going to make sure. I think I understood the question, but could you repeat it? You broke up when you said it earlier.
Oh, what are your thoughts on the changes of the governance, like the framework?
Yeah, so, okay, so, I think it was very clear when we came out of the committee of the whole out of Cleveland that there is a desire for change. And, probably different opinions on what it should be. But one of the things, I have this very distinct kind of view. I've been on the board twice. I was on there was about 10 years that separated my time. And I tell this story. Well, after the last year's board meeting, I just came out of it and I was very, very frustrated and I couldn't figure out why. So I talked to some brothers and somebody finally sat me down and said, listen, you're in a different world now. And what they meant by that is when I first served on the board, it was very operational and things were just, board meetings were being talked about very granular issues at our chapter levels. Over the 10-year course of me being on the board and then leaving it for 5 years, I have moved on in my professional world where now I'm working and advising C-level members of my team to think strategically on where should our company be going, where should we be looking for opportunities, stuff like that. So giving me that insight of the world of a true board, what became very clear is our board has to make a shift. As an organization, we can't have the top levels making decisions. And I'm going to go down to like CMP. So it was a very easy decision when we voted earlier this year. Staff should be in charge of CMP. We've given them a task of creating a system by which chapters can have a guide on what they should be doing, try to have a tool to judge their health from a large overall umbrella perspective, but the board shouldn't be making decisions on what it really means, necessarily what a chapter should be doing. So like passing and delegating those tasks off to the right people in our organization. So really and truthfully, like the steps we're making right now on the board are to set the groundwork so that when the next board entity, and I will say, I believe the board is one entity, even though the members may change. So the next board group, however you want to define that, the people sitting in those chairs have the groundwork and the framework to understand what is our governance structure, what is good governance, what is our vision, what is our mission, those type of things, which may seem like we already have them, but in truth, I think you really get down to it, we have our purpose, but we don't necessarily have the vision quite set. So I think the board's making those right steps of basically standing back and saying, no, we want to be like the strategic thinking corporate boards. I've served on a board for other nonprofits here in Kansas City. And those boards weren't making very operational. You're thinking strategy, you're thinking about where should we go? And then you're giving those job duties, which would help with the alumni engagement, which will help with our brother engagement, is like, okay, we want to go this path. You're the expert in this. Let's create a plan for us, go execute the plan. So I really think getting the board out of these operations, getting to a strategic thinking group is really what this organization needs to get to its next level.
Right. So Henry, there's a follow-up question for you. You are a current board member. Why haven't you already made the changes you're suggesting that are needed?
So I would say the first time around, that's how the board operated. There was no, and Paul served with me for a few years also, and I think we were very operational focused. That was what the board did. I've only been on it for about 12 months, but I've been working with other board members to start helping to change and work towards, hey, we don't need to be doing this every day. We can be sitting there as strategic thinkers, helping guide our staff, guide our brothers, guide our committees. So, one, this doesn't happen overnight because we are so ingrained in this operational standpoint. We had to first kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel before we started marching towards it. So now that we can see it, and it's like, okay, there is a better world. I think we are moving in the right direction. So, I appreciate the question, but I think we as an organization have changed in mentality, not that the board didn't do anything. It's just we're growing up. Daisy, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the insight, Henry. For Paul, you have been a champion for alumni chapters for a decade or so. And having sat on the committee, you have helped with the alumni chapter recognition program. However, unlike your opponents, alumni chapter, your home alumni chapter has not engaged the ACRP. What do you see or want to see happening with the ACRP across alumni chapters during your tenure?
Yeah, so that is something that we've had as a goal from alumni chapter perspective from previous officer groups. Certainly it's a program that is a voluntary program and one that you could, apply for or not apply for. I think different chapters are going to operate and really engage in different ways. I think from my home chapter perspective, we're an active chapter. We have district directors pretty much in all of the chapters. We're doing local community events. We're showing up in membership programs. So, that's not to say that we are not doing things at the local level. And again, I think it's, if you have engaged chapters, and we have also engaged in the alumni chapter awards program as well. So my general feeling is that is a guide, the alumni chapter recognition program. It could almost sort of be thought of as a CMP for alumni chapters, and we follow it as certainly as best we can. And other chapters I know follow as best I can.
Thank you both for sticking with me on those questions. Well, we're going to get back to some lighthearted questions here. So for Henry, what pizza topping would you never order on a pizza?
That's an easy answer. Mushrooms. I'm going to tell you my reasoning, and people may kind of gross out. I really have a problem eating things that are related to something that grows between my toes. Is the reason I do not like mushrooms. But then somebody will surely say, well, you like blue cheese. So maybe that's not completely true, but mushrooms are nope, no go.
I love mushrooms. That's really good sometimes. Paul?
So this is ironic considering my favorite pizza topping, but anchovies, that salt and does not work for me in a pizza. However, I do love pickles on a pizza. You kind of have the sweet and the sour. Some say like me, maybe that's why I like pickles on my pizza, but no to anchovies, absolutely 100% on pickles. It'll change your life if you haven't tried it.
Well, I'm really glad you both didn't say pineapple, because I would have to have a talk with you guys after.
That's my son's favorite, so I would get severely yelled at.
Okay, let's get to the next question. So I think I started off with Henry, so this next one will be for Paul first. What sets you apart from your counterpart who is running?
So I've been lucky really over the past 22 years to serve with a lot and work directly with a lot of different brothers, from seasoned alumni to recent graduates, and alumni who are coming back into the fold, and even collegians. And one of the things I'm extremely proud of is the fact that a lot of those folks say thanks, and thank me for being not only such a welcoming leader, but giving them an opportunity to use their skills in the best way to help the fraternity and make them want to engage. And I certainly appreciate the compliments that they've given me, but they've helped me learn a ton too. Like I just mentioned, really understand how people want to be engaged, but then more importantly, how to bring together different groups to achieve common goals. The teams that I've led have been, different mindsets, different provinces, different backgrounds, but we all worked on a strategic vision. We all worked on plans to execute that strategic vision, and we all celebrated and the results that came there. And I think those are certainly going to be two important factors here for our next Grand President. And I will admit, I did take a bit of time off from elected leadership to focus on family and career. Those 2 years really helped alleviate some of the burnout that I was starting to feel. but more importantly, really gave me an opportunity to, serve as a soccer coach, a Cub Scout leader on the boards for both of those organizations, in addition to really more interactions and advisement to our C-level executives at work. And that's something that continues today. So really what it did, it helped me take a step back and understand what other organizations are doing, what good looks like at other organizations, both from a nonprofit perspective, a business perspective, and with the customers that we're helping to serve. And also has given me a fresh kind of unbiased perspective on where the fraternity is at, and being able to combine the two to really understand what are the technology, what are the processes, and what are the kind of the engagement tactics that we need to do to kind of bring more out of our fraternity. And then how do we combine some of the good things that we currently have to make the organization better? And I'd like to think them very self-aware, and certainly someone who appreciates and does seek feedback willingly. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. The first question I've been asking a lot of folks during this campaign journey is, what can I do better? And trust me, folks haven't held back in their answers. But I think that agility and self-awareness is going to be critical. Grand President's a very high-profile role. You are the kind of the seen as the head or kind of the brand of the fraternity. So I think the ability to be the best self you can be will be important. And that's certainly something that I'll pride myself on, and getting that feedback to make sure that I'm there.
Well, we're certainly really happy to have you here and being a candidate for us, Henry.
Yeah, so, I think right now I have kind of a very unique perspective. So as I said earlier, I've been on the board twice. I'm not going to hide that fact. The first time around, the board was very operational. And I think it truly, looking back, and hindsight's always 2020, it held us back as an organization. So now returning to it, I see, I've grown, I've matured, I'm working, directly with vice presidents, chief executive officers of my organization, working through other organizations and starting to bring that in, and like doing research to try to find out what is the best, structure, has really given me this education of we could be so much better than where we are. And I'm not saying we're bad by any stretch of the imagination. There is just so much growth as an organization we can do, and I think our members are wanting. So having that perspective of where we were, I don't want to say where we failed, but where we have struggled and gotten bottlenecked in growing up as an organization, is really, having that perspective of where we are and seeing a vision of where we can go, I think really distinguishes me between the two. And it's been nonstop, right? Like, honestly, I as I stepped off the board the first time, my local RVP met me at the bottom of the stairs, and she goes, "So you ready to be a DD?" And I literally think, at that moment I went, I'm going from one of the top leadership positions to one of our most localized leadership positions, and like being back on the front lines gave me this world of knowledge. And I kind of coming back up through the ranks, it's a very different perspective. I think the other thing is that really distinguishes me is working on a virtual team that is really responsible about bringing technology and thinking outside the box, right? Like that's a daily job. And then trying, moving those things to actual execution, and that project management. That's what your Grand President should be doing, is working with their other leaders, say, okay, let's think outside the box. We have this problem that we have solved with this way 100 times before, but is that the best way? And being able to challenge the system and get others' opinions, and going to our alumni, going to our collegiates, engaging them and empowering them to be part of the process is going to be key. And I've proven time and time again in the South Central that that is my leadership style. I do not make a decision by myself unilaterally. I'm getting opinions constantly. Now, at the end of the day, I'm the one making the decision. I have to be responsible for that decision, but you can't make it in a vacuum and a void. So being able to work with other members, working with our brothers, bringing them along is also one of those distinct, talents that I truly believe I have. So. you're on mute, Daisy.
Thank you, Henry. So we just want to limit the answers to 1 minute, a minute and a half, so we could get through as many questions as we can. So for our next question, where do you see yourself in 5 years, both fraternally and professionally? Help me remember who went first, who went on the last one.
I don't even remember. Was it
So
me?
what's
Might have been you. Oh, it might have been me if Henry went second, so.
yeah,
So probably cliche. I see myself as past grand president in 5 years, fraternally, but win or lose, truthfully, no matter what the outcome of the election is, fraternally, I'll still be here. I've worked with a lot of great leaders that have been running for this position and lost. I've worked with a lot of leaders that have won the position and stepped down. So we've seen role model and role model after role model who in my life, they don't let either the disappointment or the success of the outcome of this election deter them from their passion for this organization. And I will model that. I continually model that. I have lost an election in this organization before. I'm still here. I'm still involved. I'm still engaging with our brothers. And truly, with my passion, one of the things I love doing is working with our collegiates and being a mentor and being one of their cheerleaders at times. I truly would see, like, if I don't win this election or in 5 years, whatever the outcome is, I'll be doing that because that's what I love doing. Professionally is a little harder. As I said earlier, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So who knows what'll happen there, but I'm really happy with what I do right now. I'm passionate about my job. I love it. Yes, it has frustrations. But I love the role that I play. So I truly just see myself growing as the company I work for expands and grows. So.
Paul, where do you see yourself professionally and fraternally?
Perfect. Well, yeah, I mean, fraternally, and obviously, past grand president, but certainly, I think as that past grand president, certainly continuing to help the board develop, their leadership pipelines and help another generation, Delta Sig, really bring their ideas to life, and that's no matter where kind of the shoes might fall here. Professionally, in 5 years, I'd love to be a CMO. I think that's kind of the trajectory I've gone, and certainly. Been in the startup environments and love to be a CMO at kind of an upcoming startup. Or if one of my startups does really well, doing the suburban dad thing and owning a neighborhood bar with some dueling pianos on Saturday nights might be the other piece. But I think more realistically, it'll be the CMO track.
So thank you both for that. If you guys are up for it, we're gonna go off script a little bit and get one of the questions from the audience. Henry, if you want to go first on this one. You have likely heard about the concerns in higher education around declining enrollments at many schools, including many that we serve or may expand to. What are your thoughts on how those will impact our fraternity? And what are your plans to begin to address these concerns and impacts in the next term?
Am I going first or is it Paul?
You.
Oh, okay. I think, yes, declining enrollments definitely after the pandemic have become an issue. If you look at the numbers, larger schools are getting larger, smaller schools are getting smaller. There's declining, business school numbers. If you look at it, you're painting a path that's pretty dire. I always like being the optimist. So, the thing we need to look at is, one, how do we, for the chapters we have, so that's kind of where I'll start, making sure they have the resources, whether that's additional, resources into DD trainings are going to be necessary to help them understand the individual needs and how to interpret the individual needs for the chapter. I truly see a world where we may have to expand our ELC program, our educational consultants, and getting them involved more at the chapter level in the day-to-day chapter operations. But I think, the big thing for our existing chapters is to understand the ebb and the flow of those chapter sizes as schools shrink or possibly grow. And making sure everyone has the same resources no matter what your chapter size is. The second prong I think we've got to look at is, our membership itself, the pool we pull from. Right now, we're basically on a 4-year campus, types, your traditional college, university world. I don't think I want to go, I don't think I'm ready to go the Alpha Kappa, the AK Psi, not to bring up a bad name, where they kind of went, oh, you just have to have an interest in business. But, I do think we're going to have to expand the pool, right? Like, we're going to have to look outside the box. That may be going to more community colleges where you're doing the associates programs in accounting and those type of things. I think there's a value to the organization. And I think just having the membership grow just enhances our value as a group of brothers. So I think it's going to be just never thinking in the box to solve this solution. It's going to be really truthfully coming up with new solutions that maybe we've never really considered as an organization at large. So.
Thank you. And Paul, can you give us your insight on that?
Sure. Well, I think certainly as we look at our current chapter perspectives, those chapter health scorecards which staff are developing, I think that's certainly something that we need to develop in line with the chapters, so that way we are ensuring that that is actually a health scorecard versus somewhat of a best guess scenario, and that there's alignment between the two. And we have to stop losing chapters, and we have to be proactive in terms of, yes, there are going to be situations where our memberships are smaller because of declining enrollment, but there also is situations where our chapters are smaller because we aren't proactively looking at the membership growth levels and forecasting that out. And that's certainly a metric that I think we need to be tracking in those health scorecards, and that the Cleveland chapter officers and central office need to be identifying, so they could proactively provide resources and training and help to those chapters before they get kind of to the critical mass point. From a future perspective, I come from a field marketing where a good number of CMOs, a good number of marketers never actually had business degrees. They were engineers. They might even have been in the liberal arts field. I see that in the startup world in general. There's also a lot of startup CEOs. I mean, heck, Zuckerberg and Bill Gates never completed college, though they were business majors, that were non-business majors. And I do think there is a value of having those kind of bring in non-business majors into the fold, because I think there's a diversity of thought, there's a diversity of creativity there, and certainly a growth factor. The other piece as well is we need to be really lockstep and seen as a leader, both within the corporate world and in the higher education world. And this is really doing things like, offering some joint presentations on maybe student engagement or DEI best practices and collaboration between administration and student groups that could be presented at these conferences. Now we're actually starting to have a lot more school administrators understanding that, hey, there's a group here that's really forward thinking, that's willing to work on other campuses, and that could certainly help from a growth perspective. From a corporate America perspective, I think we also really need to understand how can we deliver the most value to future employers, bake that into our educational programming, and then we're going to be able to start pumping out folks who are going, being more successful in their roles and hiring more Delta SIGs, and really using that as, I think, a true recruiting tool to start having folks. And if it goes well from a financial perspective there, I think we're also talking about corporations being more willing to invest in educational programming and leadership development programming, because that is their pipe for future employees and future leaders. So I think those are the few aspects there. So I think it's certainly protecting the core, what you have, expanding smart, and certainly encompassing and engulfing the other core constituencies that, provide us with potential financial value or growth there in our campuses and in the business community.
Yeah, so as a small chapter ourselves here in 9 to 5 Fresno State, we thank you all for your insight on this, and we'd like to see how you guys would I guess support us. We are small, but it's we are mighty, as our district director like to say.
Yeah.
So let's get to the next question. When we have RVP, PVP, and national officer elections, it seems that there is very little competition. So how can we encourage more competition and involvement to the elections to be as routine as they are now? What are your thoughts on that? And I think Paul, would you like to go first on this one?
One is certainly building that bench. So that way there are multiple kind of candidates in there who are you're ready and able to kind of go into positions. And certainly there's a couple of ways of doing that. One, making sure that we have good training programs at the collegiate level for all officers. And certainly sort of putting those folks on a bit of a leadership track should they want to do it, and giving them really kind of insight into, you know, that volunteer level or strategic level thinking in that as well. And I think certainly the other part there is more localized trainings like we're doing now. And I think I am a big proponent of, you know, some more localized lead schools and things like that, where we could actually start splitting off some of these educational sessions into leadership development. And then I think we need to make the job of district directors and regional vice presidents and provincial vice presidents a bit easier. I agree. I think certainly empowering the staff and you know, potentially increasing the chapter services size will certainly help. But I think there's also things like, you know, educational toolkits or event toolkits or playbooks for certain situations or certain chapter situations. I think, you know, will be certainly very helpful there as well.
Yeah, I think as a collegiate, we'd love to see more of like the alumni that we've looked up to be on the board or run for a national level. Henry?
Yeah, so, you know, when every role I go into, and I advise everyone down up and down the leadership change, day one, job one is to find who's coming next and start building a group of people that's going to start taking over for you. So, you know, I truly think as an organization, we don't do a good enough job of identifying those people that have interest and making sure that they have, you know, the education, the training, the tools to be great leaders, to be strategic. And I do think our organization is going two paths right now, right? You know, we're kind of looking at this maybe, you know, divergence of, hey, we've got operations that need to be handled and we've got the strategic, you know, vision of the organization. So, you know, making sure we have the right people in the right spot and they've gotten the training, they've gotten the education. I do believe staff is going to be part of that solution too. I think as, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, life was very different, you know, and it's not just COVID, it's just life has changed in general. More time is put requests upon us. So we ask a lot of our volunteers, and, you know, personal story in this matter is I have an RVP who just had a baby and we're all excited. But one of her first statements to me was she didn't really think she'd be able to be RVP. And I said, why? And she's like, because I have the baby. And I said, no. We'll work with that. We will find a way for you to continue to be a leader. If you have a desire to be an RVP, it's, you know, as I keep saying in every answer, it's like, we got to think outside the box. How do we help you get to that point? How do we help you do what you want to do in this organization and understand that, like, not everyone is going to have the same ability for time commitment and stuff like that. But as leaders up and down the, you know, the leadership chain in this organization, we have to be there to help each other. And, you know, it's right now, I'm stepping in as PVP and basically being the RVP down there. So she can relax and have time with the baby. But when she comes back, we're going to develop a plan, you know, in conjunction with the candidates for the PVP here on how she can still continue to do that role. So I think it's truly just being human and understanding people want to help and be involved. And it's finding that right balance and making sure the job's getting done and not just leaving them out there on an island to do it themselves.
I could agree that creating good support for these elected officials would help them try to run again. So this is a question. I think I'll go with Henry first on this one. What allows you to avoid burnout? Grant president is a demanding job that takes a lot of time and dedication. How do you hold up with all this stress?
A lot of puppy time. My job is stressful. I actually think I do better the more stressful things get. I often say the messier the problem, the better I'm doing, because that's what I live off. That's what I thrive off of. But I also think it's just finding that balance of, hey, I need to take personal time for my mental health and step away for, I'm not saying a long time, a couple hours. Like there are days at work, I just pack up and start walking with the dogs, wherever they're at, just to reset and reground myself. But, personally, I feed off that. I get more energized by it because it just means there's more conversations, there's more ideas to be shared and talked about. And if you haven't met me, you don't know me, just sit down with me and I'm there to talk things through and start talking about, hey, how do we solve problems? And when I say problems, I don't mean like it's a problem. It's like, how do we become better? How do we, if it is a problem, solve the problem. If it's, hey, we think we can do better, well, what's the idea? Like, what's the next step? So that is what just honestly gets me, that's what gets my engine going, and listening to the ideas. So I don't look at it as stress. I look at it as just being part of the organization, being part of the solutions for us.
Thank you, Henry. Paul, would you like to give your insight?
Yeah, I live by my calendar. Obviously, I think we have a pretty busy schedule here with 3 very active boys, but I think part of that reason why I stepped away for the elected, leadership roles there was for a reset. Really, one to kind of re-energize myself, and I've kind of come back here really a lot fresher in terms of understanding. One, family is, we are used to kind of this lifestyle, and we know how to support each other. There's often times when if it might look like I'm getting a bit stressed, I'll have my son kind of come up to me and just give me a big hug and use that as a reset. I'll do the walk away things and things like that as well. But I certainly also know and gotten very good in terms of prioritizing my time and almost shifting out my days. I have my morning shift with the kids in the morning. I have my work shift here in the afternoon, and then and sometimes into the evening. And I have my fraternity shift, mostly at night, but certainly take care of things. So I think those are certainly the ways of, one, just understanding how to schedule myself, knowing when to step back. And I've been doing this now for 25 years or 22 years or so. My wife is literally, this is all we've ever known, and truthfully, this is all my kids have ever known as well. So I think we all know, how to support each other, and have an amazing team of mentors and folks I know I could turn to when I need them.
You, Daisy.
Oh yeah.
I was muted again.
No worries.
But thank you both. Before we get into this next question, how are we all doing? Give me some reactions. Feel free to keep jumping into the questions, to the chat. Okay, so let's go with the next question. I think Paul will be answering this one first.
Mm-hmm.
CMP could be used sole question for collegiate chapters. As soon as they miss more than 2 deadlines, it's game over for them, as well as being put on guidance. And the messages from the central office they receive can be worded tougher than a work termination letter. So this is where we're losing some of our brothers. What will you do to help make the situation better?
Yeah, well, I definitely think the new chapter scorecarding system will be, I think, a lot more equitable in that matter, as well as really looking at kind of more of a health scorecard versus you getting docked for levels and things like that. I think there'll probably certainly be some kind of recognition programs in there, but the other piece would be a bit more of a health metric, but sort of like what I said earlier, I think it needs to be designed in conjunction with our collegiate chapters to really understand what are the metrics that are important to them, what are the health pieces that are important to them, and then certainly what are the right guidance terms and right way to kind of guide them into the right areas. I agree. I think the new director of brand and communication probably could also help certainly with some of the messaging I think that comes out. I think and the tone there in terms of being more of a help perspective versus kind of a guidance perspective. But I think if we're looking at those scorecards in a line fashion and being proactive with what the data is and getting to problems before they happen, I think we'll be in a much better spot. But I think in general, there's an understanding that the CMP program isn't necessarily a good indicator of chapter health.
Thank you for that. Henry?
Yeah, so I agree. CMP is not a tool to judge health. I've seen chapters who are very successful bomb on CMP. I've seen chapters do great at CMP, and I would go to them and be like, this is a train wreck. And I'm sure if you've been involved as a DD, you've seen that. So CMP, like I said, it's a great guide. It tells a chapter what it should be doing for activities. But when that proposal got brought to the board to take CMP away from the board and hand it off to staff, one of the clear things, I had a problem with the proposal, and at the end I asked for an amendment that we find a metric system for the health of the chapters, because CMP is not that. There's so much more that goes into the health of the chapters, and that's where our guidance should be. Is truly looking at the holistic approach. And one of the groups I work in that work for me is our QA group for our sales agents. And they're in sales, it's always about how much more can you sell? How much more can you sell? And that does not, more sales does not equal better salesmen. All that means is you sold more product. But if you didn't sell the right products, you didn't sell the right things, you weren't a good salesman. You probably did worse for your customer than you did good. So truly bringing that mentality and helping our staff, who's now responsible for that, to look at it holistically and say, okay, what are the metrics? What are your KPIs that a chapter should be? Is it, we have this 20 person rule that, I moved to get rid of out of our CMP that was just causing us all kinds of heartache, but because frankly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't tell us the health of a chapter. Yeah, it's an ideal chapter size, but that was some number. Somebody at some point said 20 sounds good, and that's what we've gone with. I think it's looking at those type of measurements that we use as KPI to judge our chapters and reevaluating how should they be applied. In that situation, personally, I think it's a percentage of the School of Business. That's where we should go for. Because if you got 2,000 students in the School of Business and you only got 20 members, I'm probably questioning, are you really out there recruiting? But if you had 40, you only have 200 people in your School of Business and you have 20 members in your chapter, you're probably doing really good because your pool is so much smaller of members to pull from. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we've got to look at the KPIs we're measuring our chapters with to really evaluate how do we judge their health. And it's going to be things like the CMP is part of it, but it's going to be looking at chapter size as a percent. It's going to be looking at, how are your financials? Are you paying your bills on time? Maybe even doing some, back to the old school days of, hey, we want to do some demographic studies to truly understand what is the diversity of your chapter compared to your school. Like, are you representing your school itself and its diversity inside your chapter? And those are the measurements of finding the healthy chapters and finding those chapters that we may need to give a little more resources to help, get them on the right track to success.
Thank you both. And a little bit more to add on to this, I feel like getting insight from chapter leaders themselves that are struggling with CMP, that'll be like the best way to see how CMP could be done better for these chapters that may be struggling. So we are wrapping up with our last question here soon, but I think there will be some time after to hang out. So I think the next one will, I believe Henry will be starting with this one, if you're okay with that. Okay, so at national events, DD is said to be the backbone of the fraternity. However, they are not always given the best support, respect, and acknowledgement for their work, like other leaders and staff. What would you do to improve this?
I think the first thing we've got to do is we are spending a lot of resources developing our chapter leaders, and we tell them to go to their DDs as their first kind of front line. And I think we've got to find the resources to get more DDs to events. Now, I think personally, I think our event structure is about to change, so that should become easier as we do maybe, for those, I think there's probably more alumni on this, but we used to have a system called Otis. So it was far more regionalized schools. I can really see a world that we're going towards where we're going to have more localized, events. I don't know if it'll be regional, but instead of having 3-5 leads in the spring and the fall, we're going to have a world where maybe we have 15 or 20, right? Where they're going to be more localized, they're going to be more accessible. But I think in conjunction with that, we've got to make sure our DDs have, and when I say resources, let's just be truthful, have the financial resources, have the money to get to those events. And I think we've got to start working towards that that process to get them there. I also think, I agree. I've been a DD. Like, you kind of go to these events and it's like, oh, thanks, you get recognized and stand up, and you don't get that recognition. So it's making sure that they truly are part of the solution. So, whenever I have a chapter that is struggling, that's my first person I go to. Like, the RVP and the DD should know exactly what they're doing. And we depend on them so much, so they need that respect, they need that recognition, they need that support. I think another kind of prong to this is really thinking outside the box of how to get them that education too, like the ongoing leadership development, not just one-time session, but at work, for example, you do those book clubs, you do those study groups, you do those learning from each other type situations on leadership skills and speaking, and whatever the case may be. Like, we need to have those same programs for our DDs. Definitely, since we talked earlier about building future leadership, that's where it starts. Those are the future leaders as we build this organization, right? They're going to come up through the ranks and eventually be at the same level, at the same spot that Paul and I are right now, running for this type of position. So we've got to start there on their training to get them to this spot here.
Thank you, Henry. Paul, would you like to take over?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really enjoyed doing when I was National Professional Development Chairs, we had a program that we kind of launched as a pilot program, volunteer online training, and it actually came about through surveys of the current leadership team. But basically what we did there is, we had 3 educational sessions and basically cohorts of brothers who were really kind of talking about the concepts that were happening in those sessions. And I think that's a model we could start thinking about here from a district director perspective in terms of empowerment. So, a DD for a small chapter is probably going to have a lot different challenges than a DD for a large state school. So really getting those, like for like kind of district directors together in some of those educational programming to certainly help build their skills. And I agree. I think, certainly more localized trainings and intra-regional training events, I think will certainly be helpful, as well as, the right toolkits to handle specific situations. So, hey, if there's a chapter that's struggling with their forecasted growth, here's a playbook and kind of strategy that you could use with the chapter to help them here. So there's somewhat of guidebooks in that perspective. I think in the other perspective as well, as we think about recognition here, I think it's right. Board members will get their name called. You'll have, RVPs getting your name called there as well. We're not calling the district directors' names or having them kind of stand up en masse. Maybe it's an issue of there's 50 or 25 to 30 compared to 6, but if we're talking about an equitable situation, maybe it's all RVPs stand up en masse and all national leaders here stand up en masse, and that way we're a bit more equitable from that perspective. I have one more point which is completely slipping my mind, but I think those are probably I think certainly the bigger points there, but even doing some things as potential, maybe some scholarship type of opportunities again, or some funding type of opportunities again to get them to these events. But offering them education where they at, I think will be immensely important for them, both in the role as well as they're starting to lead up the leadership track there.
Thank you both. I really agree that our district directors deserve a little bit more appreciation. As my district director was like the one that really encouraged me to become more involved after I graduate this semester, and not by them really pushing me, but by leading by example. So we're gonna end with one more question here. We're gonna do something lighthearted. So what brings you joy? What makes you happy? Share with us a favorite quote of yours, or anything you would like to share to end with.
I'd go with the Red Sox win to make me happy. But I think, my big thing is I just, my boys right now are just so in the sport. So just literally talking with my 11-year-olds who act like 50-year-old Boston people, just talking about sports all the time, I think certainly is a thing that makes me happy. In terms of quotes, mine would actually be from All Quiet on the Western Front, and a line where kind of the regiment was sort of in line and all kind of amazed at the emperor kind of down the line when someone just said, hey, he's a human being, like he puts his pants on one leg at a time. And I think about that a lot in a lot of situations as well, and that certainly helps sometimes to center me when I'm feeling a bit too stuffy. Like, hey, people are people, I'm just a person as well. So I guess those are my two things, but I also might have cut Henry off. If I did, I'm sorry. I just
You're
jumped
fine,
in.
Paul.
Excited.
Gave me a moment to
Sorry.
think, because I was like, what makes me happy? Honestly, a lot does. I think I'm the happiest with, when I'm with my friends. They're the group that support me. They're the group that are there with me constantly, whether it's good decisions I made or maybe not so good decisions that we all sit back and go, oh wow, that was probably not the smart thing to do, but we get to laugh about it later. But being there with camaraderie of people, that's what energizes me. I think that's why I like going to lead events. It's why I like going to social gatherings here in town. It's that listening to other people and listening to their stories just it energizes me. It makes me happy. It's that communication. So while I think COVID made me a little bit of an introvert, I am truly an extrovert and like being out there in the world. I think the quote, and I'm from Independence, Missouri, home of Harry S. Truman. So like one of my favorite quotes is just "the buck stops here." I've always taken that as, it's not a very like happy-go-lucky quote, but it does mean like you're responsible for it. Like whether you're in a leadership role or you're, it's even in your life, you're responsible for your own happiness, your own success, your own failures. Taking on leadership role, you have to be willing to take on that responsibility too. So it's kind of the mantra I've always lived by. It's that, hey, I'm taking the responsibility. I'm taking the proverbial bull by the horn type situations. So yeah, that's probably my favorite quote that I live by.
Thank you both for being here today and sharing with us all of your knowledge and insight. Thank you to everyone else that came and just listened in. I hope you guys got a better idea of these candidates. And everyone can stay and unmute and chat along when the recording ends.